Hi, my name is Melissa Goodlett. I'm with First Class Educator, and this morning I have joining with me Nicole Niewald. And we are joining the conversation, the critical conversations in education on teacher preparation and the gaps that we see that K through 12 educators can help fill. Without further ado, I'll have Ms. Niewald introduce herself and her experience.
Hi, I'm Nicole Niewald. I'm from the St. Louis area, but I started my teaching career in Brooklyn, Harlem, and the Bronx. I was a department leader there for about a decade before moving back to St. Louis and going into like more official school administration. I would say that by default in New York, more people are exposed to different aspects of identity and diversity. And so returning to St. Louis, I was reminded of how different it is. I returned to be a founding principal of KIPP St. Louis High School, worked there for 6 years. I was at Vashon for 2 years as an assistant principal. And for this past year, I've made the change to elementary in K-8, and I really love it. It's so joyful. It's making me smile thinking about it. Education is so hard. And for me and my soul, it's been really good to make the change to elementary. And so that has been my journey. The school I work at now is K-8. It is diverse by design. And so it's um, kiddos from every single zip code in St. Louis and diverse in every way. So socioeconomic, religion, race, ethnicity, family style, neurodiversity. And so it's really special to see kids thriving in an environment like that. And it just gives me hope again. I know it sounds dramatic, but it's real.
No, that's awesome. And the fact that you did live in New York, where it's much more diverse than it is here in the Middle States. And then with your background and experience, you can, I mean, definitely give advice to teacher education prep programs that can help us kind of fill this void that we're seeing. We know that classrooms don't mimic the teachers in the class, like the dynamics. There's much more Black and brown kids, and the teachers don't match that. So there is that gap. So without further ado, I'll ask you the first question and feel free to just give us your perspective. All right, from your perspective as a school leader, what signs do you look for that indicate a teacher has been well prepared through a culturally responsive lens?
To be culturally responsive, I think you need to be a responsive and adaptive human. And that's what I look for first, because I truly believe you have to know yourself and all the aspects of your own identity and intersectionality and how it may interact with the same or differing across lines of difference. And so for me, I really look for when I'm hiring mindset, mission alignment, and adaptiveness and willingness to learn. So like, I'm the daughter of immigrants, white immigrants, right? But like, my family's from Ireland directly, and my dad's family is pretty country. And I would say my dad's really culturally responsive because he always says, I don't know what I don't know. He listens and he asks questions and he learns and he just is, that's how he shows his genuine curiosity and kindness. And so for me, textbook answers don't necessarily tell me anything. I see it in people's heart, and I really look for that, like, willingness to learn, willingness to have conversations that might be tough for others just because you're genuinely curious. The cultural responsiveness is really, I look for those things that are, not conflict avoidant, open to having conversations, direct, honest, humble, because we all have different things to learn. And I also think like making assumptions that, oh, this should be a part of this culture or that is also problematic. So I think knowing that you don't know what you don't know and being able to listen and be prepared to have people be direct with you when you need it and hear it and listen and learn and ask questions. That's what I look for
I
because you
love
can't
that.
know it all.
Right. I love what your father said. I don't know what I don't know, and then being curious. And I
Yeah.
think that's the part of culturally responsive teaching um, that is so true. I think above everything else because you don't know. So to be curious and open and flexible, I think is the heart of the matter for culturally responsive teaching. And next, can you describe a moment then when you observed a teacher navigating a culturally complex classroom situation, issue, or event well? And then how well do you think their preparation played a role in that?
So I had a wonderfully kind first year teacher at a school here, and I will anonymize this scenario. He is Mexican American, white presenting, a gay man, and some a family had found out more about his identity than they needed to know, and were really upset with him and approached him at conferences about it and and about his lifestyle and how they felt about it. Just not in a way that I believe had anything to do with the learning experience and the love that their child was receiving. And I didn't know about it until after the fact because he handled it with such love and grace and care and concern and humility. Man, he really listened when they were saying things that were directly hurtful to his identity. But he listened and he said, I wanted to know that information. I wanted to know how people were thinking, and I wanted them to feel heard. And and when it was my opportunity, I asked questions and I said, this is how I believe I present myself as a facilitator of your child's learning. And like, how might you see that differently? And was able to build trust and rapport. I think for me, actually, this is what I was going for in the first question that was off the top of my tongue. I think what the people see your heart.
Mhm.
If you're not with leading or loving with authenticity, families see that, kids see that. And so you just have to be who you are.
100%. They see through that. And
Hmm.
would you say with your teacher that, back to what your father said, I don't know what I don't know, do you think then he gave them the opportunity to, not without divulging or giving up his identity, but explaining to the family, like he kept it student centered, but then he also opened up a little bit about his belief?
His preparation played well because he did keep it student centered and he kept it focused on not about his part. He kept his sexuality, that part of his identity, and he kept his race out of it too, and his ethnicity being Mexican American. He kept those things out of it in order to focus on how he wants to show up for kids and how it might be impacting. That child happened to be Black. And so he's like, I hope to present myself as someone who is an advocate for students and who hears them and loves them and challenges them. And how might I do that better for your child?
Love it.
And
Well,
that's culture responsive
it is.
because in my mind, because culture responsive is the biggest part, right? And so he might have thought like, oh, I think I'm showing up in this way. But if the family or the student doesn't feel that way, you need to listen.
Right. And he gave them an opportunity to say, in what way am I not showing up for your child? And as a parent, I think it's hard for me to um, dislike or have issues with somebody loving on my child and showing up for them in the classroom. So keeping it focused on that makes an argument hard to, to keep. Thank you
Hmm.
for sharing that. Okay, so when it comes to teacher readiness, what would you say or notice that are specific gaps in cultural responsiveness that higher education faculty or field supervisors may not always know?
I think 1000% the biggest one is being able to have crucial conversations, being able to stick to the facts and ask questions, stop and say, this happened. This is how I felt. What is your take on it? I would say that the ability to have conversations and keep them professional.
And finally, what's one piece of advice to teacher educators aiming to better align their preparation with K through 12 needs? Like, what would it be if you had advice for higher ed teacher prep supervisors and instructors? What one piece of advice?
One piece of advice would be learn who is the best mentor, or I would say 1 to 3 mentors are going to be for you. and why they're good for you and what makes their counsel so good. I think it's really important as a teacher educator to think about like who can be my, Mr. Miyagi
Yeah.
and why and what are they pouring into me and how does it make me feel? And so you got to have that love and encouragement. Yeah, there's one last thing I would say. I think there's something about experiential learning, especially if you're going to teach in the city of St. Louis, because at the beginning of this, we talked about New York being so diverse. St. Louis has diversity, it's just so segregated, And so I think about like it would be really powerful if new teachers learned about the assets of the different communities in St. Louis, like learn about the community and the sisterhood and the fellowship and the food in our Black community. Learn about the resilience of the Vietnamese immigrants who came here and learn about the resilience of the Bosnian people who came here in the middle of a
Yeah.
war, like things like that. Like learn about how the highway system impacted our entire city, right? And so I think like learning about our history and then learning the assets and the strengths of a community really shifts a person as a human.
It really does. It really does. With my consulting group, we talked about teaching locally, teaching about local culture and how that's powerful. And in my class, I did the same. And it was just an eye opener for my students, for myself. I unearthed some things I didn't know. And so it just made me a more informed, engaged educator as well. And your students, they pick up on that.
Hmm.
And so it gives you a better appreciation for your students and the environment and culture that they live in. So,
Hmm.
thank you for your insights, your experience, your advice, your time. I know you're busy. So, with that, I'm going to say, have a great rest of your day, and thank you.